Welcome to another episode of Inspire People, Impact Lives. I'm your host, Josh Kosnick, managing partner in Northwestern Mutual. And today I have a very special guest in Jeff Burkhart. Jeff is the Executive Director of Literacy Network of Dane County. And he's here to talk about empowering teams, which is awesome. Jeff brings over 20 years of program development and leadership in the field of adult literacy. In his time at Literacy Network, the organization has significantly extended its impact, developed numerous partnerships to support adults and families, created nationally recognized programs. Jeff, excited to have you here today. Welcome to the show.
Thanks very much for having me today, Josh.
So before we dive in, I always want to give guests the opportunity to really talk a little bit about themselves, their upbringing, give people some context from where you started to who you are today.
All right. I grew up in a small town in Indiana, Peru, Indiana, and it is the circus capital of the world, self-proclaimed. My family doctor, no joke, was the head clown in the circus, and Dr. Hill.
A lot of trust there, right?
That's right. Yeah, absolutely. So it's a big amateur circus every year in the third week of July. I then moved to another town in Indiana when I was a sophomore in high school, which was kind of disruptive to my social life and just kind of my whole world. But I did go to Indiana University as well. So I'm a Hoosier through and through. And I was the first person in my family to go to college. And I think that kind of led me to where I am now in a lot of ways, because I struggled with the study skills that I needed to be able to be a good student. But I had a professor named Claude Cookman who was just a really sweet guy. And he took me aside one day and he said, I think you can be a really good student. I was having probably some issues with really applying myself. And he really influenced me. He helped me to really see myself a lot differently. And I finished college in 4 years. And then I was looking around for things to do. And one of the things that really struck me was the impact that it had on me to have somebody really take an interest in me and say that they saw me in a particular light, and how that really shifted my perspective. And I thought, if somebody like me who has, have all this privilege in the world, had a hard time believing in himself, then there must be, other folks in the world who probably are in similar situations. So I looked around for things to do and found a literacy organization at the local library in Bloomington and started tutoring. And I worked with a guy named Juan who had 3 kids and 3 jobs. And he struggled with the time, finding time to make it work. But I could see that it really was making a difference for him and also for his family. He was better able to engage with the schools, doing better on his job, just having a lot more confidence. And I was kind of hooked on adult literacy at that point. So I moved from being a volunteer to being more of a higher level volunteer at an AmeriCorps program in Durham, North Carolina, and just got a lot of program planning experience when I was about 22 years old. And I really loved it. I thought it was a great thing. And I remember saying to myself one day, if I could make this work, for a couple years, try it out and see if I can do stuff like this. I wasn't making any money, or not very much anyway, but I really loved it. And I thought it was making a big difference in people's lives. So it's kind of how I got on that start in adult literacy.
Oh, that's awesome. So my wife's from Indiana.
Oh, okay.
Small town outside Fort Wayne, Indiana. So she lived her whole life there and went to Anderson University right above Indy there. Small Christian university, great business school.
What town is she from, Josh?
Monroeville, which is just east, basically over by the Ohio border.
Yep.
Fort Wayne. So
yeah. Okay. Good. Yeah. I was close to Fort Wayne as well, in Auburn.
So I've actually, coincidentally, been to the Auburn Car Show.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, big deal, right?
Big deal. I didn't know it was such a big deal, and I didn't know Indiana had such a history in cars.
Yeah.
But I guess being just south of Detroit, that makes sense. But back in the day, used to be a much bigger producer, which is pretty cool.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Well, that's a cool little commonality there. But we make that trip frequently. We'll be there in a couple of weeks again.
Okay, good. Yeah.
Got to go see the family. So off that, you talked about how you got your start and the impact that you were having just in that one instance with, I think you said Juan, like what was it about that instance that, you saw the difference in you? Because I think there's often times in life where we as human beings, we can have an impact, but we don't necessarily have a spark. Like we can leave that impact in isolation and not do anything with it. You chose to do something with it. What was it about that experience with that dad, with 3 kids and 3 jobs, that you're like, I want to lean towards a career towards this?
It was just seeing that my simple belief in that person had such an impact on their ability to see themselves differently. And, I felt it in myself, and I could very tangibly see it in other people. And it was less about building the skills, because you have to get to the confidence level to help those skills be developed. And so there was really that spark that you mentioned, Josh, is that it's really got to be like an inspiration, and having a path forward so that people can understand, what their future might look like if they decide to go down this path. And, for him and many other students that I've worked with over the years, we just really see that time and time again, that that there's hope and that there's opportunity. And, these are folks who, they have dreams and they're mature individuals, and they just kind of get an opportunity to run with that. And it's just so inspiring to me, because it's not just about that one person, it's about their whole family. And it just opens so many doors. It's so inspiring to me.
No, it's cool. That was, as you're telling that story, I thought that was just appropriate to touch on, because not everyone gets that spark and carries it forward. Sometimes that spark is just left in isolation. So, and not that that's a bad thing, it just carried you forward. So, so you're really known for, interestingly enough, from what I've heard, on the leadership topic side of things, and you love talking about leadership. So let's dive into that a little bit.
Sure.
I'll start with, when did you first start seeing yourself as a leader?
That's a really great question. I think it's probably, for me, it's been an evolution. And there are always moments of doubt to this day. Am I doing the right thing? Am I making the right decision? Am I helping to guide this process in the way that I need to? But I think when I first started to see myself as a potential leader, was, when I was first given the opportunity to teach a class of, younger people who, again, I was in my early 20s when I started down this road. And I was asked to teach a group of about 10 to 15 folks who had dropped out of high school and didn't have a whole lot of tools to work with. So I really started digging into, like, what does it take to inspire and guide? And teaching is really, being in a classroom is really about leadership and helping people to, come to their own understanding of why they're there and what they need to do to succeed. And these were all people who, for whatever reason, had not had a successful educational experience. And so that was a big challenge. I didn't succeed with everybody, for sure, but there were a few folks that had some good breakthroughs. So that was probably the first time I really saw myself in that kind of a role, was when I was in my early 20s.
That's awesome. Mm-hmm. And so now it's carried forward many years and continue to go. But when did you start to become the man you are today? Was there a moment, or do you consider that an evolution?
um, it's interesting because I think about, who I am now, and I look back on the kid that I was when I was, maybe 13, and I don't really see a whole lot of difference in the core person, which for better or worse, I don't know. But I guess this is a really tough question. I saw this one as I was preparing today, Josh, and I think I probably started becoming the person I am today when, to be quite frank with you, I was in a youth group, and it was like an after school program, and there were groups of boys and girls, and there were more boys than girls, and the instructor said, well, we've got to have one boy go to the girls' side. And everybody just sat there mum. I was probably like, I don't know, 10 years old. And I was like, I raised my hand, and it was like the shocking thing. And I went to the girls' side, and I thought, wow, that's, it was kind of being willing to step out of a role. Like, it was a super small thing, of course, but I kind of thought that was cool. Like, I was like, oh, I'm the one who stepped out of the comfort zone, and I started doing this other thing. And so I started thinking about that as maybe that's a way for me to be in the world, is to, kind of buck the, whatever expectations that people have, and to just do the thing that I think is right at that given time. Not to say that I'm always doing the right thing, but I think about what the next step might be, and try and do the right thing as opposed to the thing that's easiest. So,
So what you're talking about there was courage, right? So you took, that was a courageous thing amongst a group of 10-year-old boys, 10, 11-year-old boys.
Right.
That, at that point in our lives, having been a 10, 11-year-old boy like that, going to the girls' side would not have been of interest, right? Or it would have been really hard to do amongst your peers that are all trying to stay back, and you chose to take that step. So have there ever, just on that topic, because I think it is one of those, so one of my in the Strengths Finder, my number one strength is activator.
Oh, yeah.
And so getting to know myself even better, being able to act in moments and having courage in moments, it's one of the things that I try to emulate and teach for my kids as well. Courage isn't, not having fear, but rather acting in light of fear. And then that's what you did in that situation. Have there been any other situations in your life where they were kind of momentous in your mind as far as having that courage to do the right thing?
Yeah, I think, the most relevant and recent thing was, with when COVID struck. We, as an organization, had to make a quick decision about what to do. And it was very scary for our students, for our staff. And, we all kind of started to develop new skills, using technology, of course, but also building upon the collaboration that we'd had among staff members. And the primary thing that we have always put first, which I'm really proud of, is that we want to focus on the well-being and the capacity of our students to move forward in their lives. We knew that most of our students were going to be severely impacted because we work with adults who are struggling with English language and reading and writing skills. And most of our students are in lower wage jobs. So we knew that those were the types of jobs that were going to be most in jeopardy, and that their economic well-being was going to be really tenuous. It already had been, and we knew that it was going to be even more so under COVID. So we pulled together a team very, very quickly to just start calling students and say, how are you? Do you need anything? How can we help? And we didn't have all the answers, but we were connected to a lot of different organizations. We made more than 400 connections to income assistance, to food services, to health services. And our students, as a result, felt very supported and empowered. And I'm really proud of our team for that. And I think that was not the easy thing to do, right? It would have just been easier for us to continue to do the day-to-day work, move things to Zoom, offer the classes as we could, but we knew that we needed to do more. And ultimately, what it turned out to be for us was we had great retention in our programs. Our students kept coming because they knew that we cared about them, and they knew that we were offering them something really essential. And they knew that it was more than just a transactional relationship that they had with us. They are like family. I mean, we feel as a staff very close, I think much closer now, having gone through all this. And our students absolutely feel that. They feel so well supported and that we really care about them. And so that's the most recent thing that I would point to that I'm really proud of in terms of developing those types of skills.
That's really cool. You essentially turned yourself into a full service organization, from a literacy network to how can we help on a much broader scale.
Yeah.
Was there a prevailing question that you were asking? So I think back, I'll just give you an example. Perhaps this gives you some context. When that happened for us, running this business and, okay, we're going to have to essentially, as the state and mandated, quarantine and shutting everything down for at least 2 weeks, and we knew it was likely to be longer. Mm-hmm. There's a lot of fear, right, with that. And, we're used to being an in-person business. And the question I kept asking is, this is what it is. How do we embrace the suck of the situation and think about this as an opportunity instead of just woe is me? That was how do we capitalize on the opportunity? And I don't mean capitalize in like a monetary way. Of course, that could be a byproduct. But how do we think about things differently to be able to still move forward despite for lack of better terms, a sucky situation?
Sure. So what did you do? How did you move forward?
One of the things was on so we did have to go on quarantine, and this is, so this benefit, one of the things, just as from a really small instance, this podcast, like we're able to do this. Uh-huh. Like everything else, like you can see the microphones behind us. You and I would typically be sitting across from each other. Mm-hmm. So we've had a couple national guests on, even though we have a more local focus, but we've had some national guests, and I was able to do. Our advisors moved to Zoom, right? Whereas it became more normalized, right? So whereas Zoom was more Zoom, Skype, this technology has been around for a decade, but it wasn't normal, right? Face-to-face, shaking your advisor's hand, stuff of that nature, that was normal. Handing papers off, statements off, checks off, whatever, that's normal. Now everything's digital, by mail, via Zoom. So we made sure that we did some trainings for some of our veteran advisors. We made our technology people available to them. We made sure that they had a list of things that they needed at home. Even myself, I never worked from home. Now I actually do a couple days, 1 day a week, sometimes two. So I had to get the webcam, I had to get the microphone, I had to make sure that I got a little light so my face looks, because I'm not in a windowed office at home. So I actually light up a little bit. Like right. I had to find out some of this stuff. So we were giving that advice to some of our veteran advisors too. I learned 3 different video technologies from GoToMeeting, Ring Central, which is powered by Zoom, so it's pretty similar to Zoom, and Zoom. Teams, I'm still getting used to. I don't like it as much because that's like the 4th one I've had to learn. Yeah. So there's a lot of little different things that we did. But the other thing we did is one of the coolest things, and I'll let you speak on your side of things. I got to speak to the UW Whitewater football team.
Oh, cool.
So we had like 120 people on that call. And one of the things we learned with that was, in certain Zoom settings, or depending on which one you pay for, you have a max of 100 guests. And then you got to upgrade to get
Right.
more, right?
Yeah.
That's how they get you, right? So we had to have roommates consolidate to one computer and whatnot. So that's how we got 120 on there. But that's something that I don't know. We've never done before. It was myself and two other leaders that got to speak to the Whitewater football team. And really, we were just having a conversation about leadership.
Uh-huh.
And we got to talk about some great books. Like, we weren't talking about Northwestern Mutual. We weren't talking about our business or that much. And they weren't able to play football. So part of the reason the coach wanted us on was to give them, and this is really, the athletic department there and the head coach that wanted us to give them something different that they weren't getting during the season. Mm-hmm. So we weren't the only speakers that they heard from, whereas the Division I, football teams were eventually able to play. So that's just what. And there's probably a bunch that I could go through, but it was like, how do we think about this differently? We did career fairs virtually, which was a trip. How universities had to do that. That was pretty cool. Mm-hmm. I hope to not have to do much of this again, but the fact of the matter is that we're now capable of doing it. I hope that we can return to, being able to shake people's hands and look them in the eye and that type of stuff very soon. But the cool piece of it is that we are adaptable and capable of doing it.
Yeah, that's great. From our standpoint, we shifted quite a bit. Everything moved online. Eventually, we initially thought, because most of our students didn't have computers, that it would be hard for us to do virtual programming. So we started by sending books to students and then having calls, kind of one-on-one. And that was kind of the way we ended our spring semester last year, which goes to May. And we, at the same time, we were researching a lot of different avenues. We talked to somebody. Actually, there was a webcast that was done through the National Literacy Organization called Pro Literacy. And they were, there were a variety of different organizations, because California had, had to deal with COVID earlier. They had already adjusted, and there was a organization in Orange County that, they had shifted everything to Zoom, and they said, their student population was pretty similar to ours in terms of the, who they were serving and the socioeconomic levels of the students. And they said everybody's using a smartphone almost. And so we knew that almost all of our students had smartphones, and they were able to make it work. And, there were certainly some exceptions. And we also had computers that we were able to lend out. Some of our tutors had invested some money with us to help us purchase some laptops that we were then able to give to students. So that really helped us to make it work. And then on the education side, our teachers were all learning, various tools, not only Zoom, but also, how to use Kahoots and other online tools that would help us to manage the classes. And we were able to maintain about 80 to 90% of our student population, which was quite a feat for that period of time.
Yeah, I think about all the socioeconomic stuff that you're talking about and being able to, right. So my advisors are dealing with people that have means, right? Mm-hmm. So they have, they may not be technologically proficient, let's say, but they have means to at least be on there. Their camera might be looking up their nose, but at least they're on there and can listen and whatever. I can only imagine what you guys were trying to, fumble your way through with people that, English is their second language or don't have the, computer. So kudos to you guys for the extra special effort.
Yeah, thanks.
One of the things I think I'd be remiss that I remembered that I didn't mention was we're talking today about we're about to get into our main topic of empowering teams. One of the things we did was started town halls, and so I have about 200 people throughout the organization, all over southern Wisconsin and northern Illinois. And so we're not traveling right now. We couldn't have what we call as network days, where we would typically bring in some high-powered speakers, stuff of that nature. So I started out doing weekly when we were in quarantine. And then I moved it to monthly as we started shifting some people back to the office. But it was a way to have all of us in one spot. And sometimes I would have speakers, and sometimes I would just give some pearls, or it just created some camaraderie, and we were able to see each other's faces. And I thought that was really powerful. And again, we would much rather prefer to do that in person, but we adapted, and it was cool to see people smile just being able to see each other when they haven't seen each other, or in some cases haven't seen anyone beyond their immediate family in weeks or months. So.
Yeah, that's great. And I think Zoom has really helped us to stay connected, and in some ways it enabled us to build different connections with people that we wouldn't normally see.
Yep, I agree. And that's some of the national guests that we've had on. That wouldn't have happened because we like to have this local focus, and we'll always continue that. But Chad and I are sitting here going, hey, well, we can continue to do that and sprinkle in people that are just amazing people that we can bring to the Madison or Wisconsin marketplace to hear some pearls of wisdom.
Yeah, that's great.
So how do you feel you have been the most successful in working to empower others as a leader? I think as we transition into our main topic, thought that would be a good question to start with.
Yeah, I think the period of COVID has really demonstrated some of the empowering skills that our staff have, as well as our volunteers. And one of the key components of this was, I think that, I'm just able to listen to people, and that's really important. Being authentic has been really important. Like I do, I let my heart be on my sleeve, for people to see that I'm here for a reason. Like I really love this work. I love the organization, and the people who are there. I think they're so committed, and they really enjoy the work that they do. And so I think that's a big part of empowerment, is to demonstrate first and foremost that you are there for a reason, that we're all here to move this mission forward, to support our students, that we're always focused on our students. And I recognize very clearly that I am not perfect. I make mistakes all the time, and I try and own it, and not try and sweep things under the rug. So just being humble and being open and transparent about, where you are and what you're doing. I have regular, sessions with our whole staff, where we talk about kind of the big picture stuff, where we're going, what we're doing, how the organization is doing financially, what programs we're building, what strategic initiatives we're taking on. And everybody has a piece of that. Everybody feels like they have some ownership over it. So that's a very empowering thing, when you see that you're making a big difference as a part of a group.
Hey, remind me, how many people are you leading currently?
We have 20 regular staff members, and then a variety of part-time staff. So our payroll is usually around 28 per month. But we have interns and volunteers, numbering about 200. So we really support a pretty large network of folks who are doing this work.
Yeah. So I was thinking, as you were saying there, one of the powerful things you said was that you own the mistakes that you make. Mm-hmm. Can you think of a way, because I think that's so powerful, and humility in leaders is one of the most underrated traits. I think as experienced leaders go, they figure that out. The more experience you get as a leader, you figure out that, humility is not a weakness. It is a true strength to be able to show that. That's something that I figured out firsthand, making some of those mistakes and being proud or letting my ego get in the way of certain instances, because we don't like to be wrong. Like, we don't like to lose. Like, those are human things. But when we can own those lessons, it's really endearing to those that we lead. That, hey, especially when you are the leader, when you can own a mistake, I think it's a really powerful tool that allows others to not be afraid to make mistakes and try new things, and it leads to this cycle of success that can really propel an organization. Can you think of an example where you've owned something that's had a lot of power and move the organization or move the needle?
Yeah. So we were doing a capital campaign to purchase and renovate a building, which we were successful in doing, but it took longer than I think we initially planned. And there were a variety of reasons for that, and it was a bigger endeavor than we'd ever taken on. But ultimately we were successful. But I think people saw, both board members and staff members saw that there were all these struggles that we were going through, and sometimes we would ask for money and not get it, and that was hard. It was just a really hard thing, but I was very open about that without it being demoralizing. I think, I think there were some moments where it was like, oh man, we just, if we'd only gotten this one grant, or, this conversation had gone better, we would have been here sooner. But I think, you take those things as they come. And I learned to do that, at first, and I still beat myself up a lot, but I think at first when we had things that were not successful, I took it as a very personal, issue that I wasn't doing it well enough, or whatever it might be.
Or I was a failure because of it. Yeah.
Mm-hmm, right. And then, after a few successes, you realize, you're not going to win everything. You're not going to, but you have to just continue to plow through and take as many shots as you can, because, eventually you're going to see, a certain percentage of those things are going to land. So, it's like the old Wayne Gretzky, quote, you miss 100% of the shots you never take. Yeah. Or was that Michael Jordan, or whoever, one of these great guys?
I think it was Michael Jordan, because I'm a big Chicago fan, but it's like some of those quotes that are always attributed to Abe Lincoln. I feel like
right.
Even from Abe Lincoln, when it was really, someone totally different. But
yeah. But yeah, it's just about persistence and just continuing to move forward. And I think people kind of saw that, and hopefully they, kind of grew from it as well, and learned from my mistakes, hopefully.
Yeah. I mean, that's the goal, but there are some mistakes everyone needs to learn on their own, especially if you have a stubborn personality like myself. There's some trials by fire that are needed to be walked through personally versus through others. I always ask this question at the beginning of our new advisor academies. As I teach the 5 stages of learning, I ask, what is the best way to learn? And I give 2 options. Through your own experience or through others' experience. And I have the training class raise their hand, which they think is best. And most of them raise their hand for through their own experience. And that's based on the trials and tribulations they faced to that point in their life. But there'll be a few that'll raise their hand through others' experience. And the whole point of it, and for any future trainee, I'll give away the answer, is to say that it's a trick question. It's a flawed question, I should say. It's not a trick question. It's a flawed question. Because the answer is truly what does best mean, right? That's totally subjective. So it's really to say that probably the greatest way to learn would be through your own experience, but the most efficient way to learn is through others. And to the point is that to open their minds to, hey, there's a lot of experience around here walking these halls, from 30-year advisors to people that have been on the team for 20 plus years. Please take some of those lessons that they've learned, take their coaching, take their advice, so you don't have to learn the hard way. But like you said, some people, in some situations, you have to learn the hard way.
Sure, absolutely.
Excuse me. So one of the other words you utilized in as you were speaking there was authenticity. How do you feel authenticity plays into empowering people and teams? Because I love that word, and you mentioned it as you were speaking there.
Yeah.
How has that played out for you?
I think that being authentic leads you to answering the questions that are on everybody's minds. That you're open to the comments that other people have, the suggestions that other people have, because you recognize you don't have all the answers. So, I think somebody who's less authentic may try to demonstrate that they know everything, or that they are, on top of all the aspects of their life and in work and in their personal life. And we all know that you can't know everything. You can't be everything. So why not just own that, be the best you can be, and utilize the skills and experience of other people. Like you said, the best way to learn may be to just have an open ear and
listen,
and just be connected with people and understand that their experience can teach you a lot as well. And I think authenticity is one key element of that.
You spoke to, as you were describing authenticity, I kept thinking, man, you're such a humble dude, because you're talking about humility traits as well with that. Do you think there's a paradox between authenticity and humility? Because you can authentically be an asshole.
True.
Like that might be your authentic trait, is to be an asshole. But that's not a good leadership trait. So do you think there's a paradox? And I'm just spitballing here. Like, I don't know if you have an answer or not, but that's what I was thinking, is like, as you were describing authenticity, like there's a lot of humility, and that could be just because your humility is, that it might be a strength of yours. But I was just thinking, any thought there?
I have not really given that a whole lot of thought, Josh.
I hadn't either until you started talking there. I think hopefully all of us are learning and growing and finding ways to be better people. And that's one that I think that's probably one really important thing to do, is to just own your stuff and not try and be too much to everybody. And also, be accountable. I think that's important. I think that's another aspect of it is, if you're authentic and you're setting your own goals and you're saying to other people, here's my benchmark, and I'm going to try and make it to this point, and then be able to reflect on why you did or did not meet those goals. I think you just inadvertently answered the question I was getting at. Is maybe it wasn't inadvertent, maybe it was purpose. You're just downplaying it. Is owning your stuff, right? So let's talk about that again. Pardon my language to anyone listening, but like that authentic asshole is like, you have to also own the impact of your actions on someone else.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
You have to be accountable to that. Like if you railroad someone, if you run over someone emotionally, because you were being your authentic self and you were giving them blunt, direct feedback. We'll remove the a-hole term and say you're giving blunt, direct feedback, but you run over them emotionally. You have to notice the impact that you had on that person, and perhaps circle back around and say, hey, you know what? I didn't mean it to come off like that. I can tell that I might have either hurt you or impacted you with the words that I just said. Here's what I really meant. Yeah. Or you could even ask the question, how did you hear me or experience me in that moment, to make sure that it landed the way I wanted to land?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I think we can get caught up in some pretty toxic behaviors especially when things get a little tense and there are high stakes. And so just taking a step back, like I just did that today, just with a staff person who was just kind of having a hard day. And I just said, you know what, you're doing a great job. And here's here are all the things that I see us doing as a result of your impact. And that was real. That was not something that I just made up. It was, this person, we're all having a hard time during COVID, with all these, social challenges and not to mention the health challenges that some people are experiencing. But we have to give ourselves, a break and recognize the good work that's going on around us. And, I think that's really, really important in, just holding everything together, and being a part of a team.
Yeah, give yourself a break. Yeah, I like that. It's like, give yourself some grace in this time. Because like you said, we are all going through, hopefully a once in a lifetime, episode, if we will, or just chapter of our lives that, some of us would love to forget. But I was reminded, I think I talked about this on an episode, but if some people have said, 2020 just sucked, or this pandemic sucked, or like just labeled it all like that. And I wish if you think about it, like, I wish we could just, get rid of it as we were approaching the new year. We get to start over 2021. And I was thinking about that. Well, there's no guarantee 2021 is going to be better.
Right.
So, and also with 2020, like there was probably some really good things that happened in people's lives, or at least one good thing. And if you toss out all of 2020, that means that good thing went away too.
Right. Yeah.
So we have to keep perspective as like, yeah, there's some really bad things, some really hard times that all of us face, some of us worse than others.
Yeah.
But if we toss it all out, we're tossing away any of the good things that might have happened, all the growth that might have happened, the adaptability that might have happened, all the lessons that we learned would go away as well.
You've actually got it. I mean, that's that. And I've said that to people in the last few months too. I said, we've demonstrated some amazing growth as staff people and as collaborators with one another. I don't want to go through it again, but boy, it was empowering. I mean, there was just so much stuff that we did that was really, really powerful to support our students and to really focus on the mission. And so it really kind of helped us to, I guess, boil it down and just say, this is the situation we're in, and these are the skills that we're going to utilize to get through it. And everybody pulled together to do it.
That's great. So speaking of pulling together to do that, what do you see as the biggest barriers to empowering teams and working teams?
I think we could look at the opposite of what I was talking about. And I think there's a lot of this going on all over the place. Lack of transparency, lack of trust, thinking that the answer, being kind of hard-headed, and feeling like, nobody's going to tell me what to do because I've got all these answers, and that just shuts everybody down. And so those are the biggest barriers, I think, that we have to progress in a lot of areas of our societies, that people are digging their heels in, and thinking that they have the answer, or they know, what somebody's intentions are. And we see that throughout our society in this country right now. Yeah. There's just such divisiveness and such sort of ingrained, attitudes that people have on all sides of the political spectrum. Oh, yeah. Not pointing at any one person or any type of person, but it happens throughout our society. And I think social media has been, one of the big carriers of that it's a real problem that we need to address. And I don't have the answers for it, but boy, you can really, create a lot of barriers by saying, I'm always right.
Yeah. Actually, I have one answer. It's not going to be the entire answer, but it can certainly help individuals in any given situation. It's just a question I learned a number of years back. In every problem in any situation, to ask myself, what part of the problem is me?
Yeah.
Could be 1%, could be 100%. It's usually not 100%, but like it could be 1%. Like even if it's a situation where a spouse is cheating, let's say my spouse was cheating on me, and I feel like I have no control of that. Well, there could be part of it that was me, that I enabled that. And that's just could be a really bad example in the road to go down. But there, in every situation, or if you and I were in a disagreement and I'm complaining to Chad about our disagreement and I'm talking about you, and I'm like, it's very clear, and even to Chad, that it was definitely Jeff Burkhart's fault. It's definitely his fault. But every part of that, there's this, like, I played a role because there's two individuals in that argument. There's two individuals in that situation. So I just feel like any situation I have to look at myself in the mirror and figure out what part of it was me and how do I correct that moving forward.
Yeah. Or how can you diffuse a situation,
Yeah. And maybe it's to, hey, that person served a role in my life before, and now they don't moving forward.
Right.
There's all of this different stuff. So that question has just been really impactful to me, and it helps me get out of woe is me. Mm-hmm. Right. Instead of being the victim, I can be like, okay, I can own this part of the situation and move forward. Yeah. And if that other person chooses to own their part, then we can move forward together. Otherwise, maybe that person serves no purpose in my life anymore. Sure. Yeah, absolutely. I have no answers for politics as a whole.
I didn't mean to open that door up, but
no, it's all right. It's one of the pressing ones. We're just coming off an election, and more heated political times of our lives. So either way, what do you think people struggle with most, especially maybe those type A personalities, when they come onto a team and really embracing the teamwork and empowering others on the team instead of being a detractor from the team?
I think that learning the culture is sometimes challenging for some people. What does this organization stand for? How does it operate? Coming onto a team, when it's already been built and people have their pretty well defined roles, can be a challenge. And so I've seen some issues like that where, you want to carve out your niche and you're trying to figure it out. And so onboarding, I think, is really important. Helping people to find a mentor or somebody who can, just be their friend that's not their manager. We've done that. We started to build that in for every new person when they come on board.
So it's kind of like a work buddy that has no power structure over them.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, that's good.
Yeah. And also having opportunity for growth and leadership. And I think we've done a really good job of that. Most of our, almost half of our staff, I should say, have been interns or volunteers in the past. And so they learned the organization from that perspective, and we kind of helped them grow. We helped them to build new skills. So I think that's it. That shows that we're a learning organization.
No, it's really good. I like that. I think that even just that simple, seemingly simple, I should say, idea of just that work buddy relationship could help many small companies, large companies otherwise. I want to be cognizant of our time together, and we'll wrap up. But the last question I have for you is, do you have any systems for or process for growth, reflection, productivity, leadership, et cetera, that you'd like to share with us?
One book that we've used is called Managing to Change the World, and it's very good. It's systematic. It's designed for organizations that are serving a social cause. So I think they're mostly aligned with nonprofits, but I think it could be for any type of organization. But it really lays out some key ways to hold people accountable and to invest in your staff and in your people as well as you can. You can maintain your heart, but also want to make sure that you're focused on accountability and productivity. And so that's kind of a touchstone for us. And also I've used the 7 Habits of Highly Successful People a lot throughout my career. And I still talk about, like the big rocks and, controlling the controllables and all those things. They're very much seek first understanding.
Win-win.
Mm-hmm. Yep. So
begin with the end in mind, all of them.
Yeah. So I've really, it's ingrained in my thinking about, getting things done myself.
That's great. Mm-hmm. Thank you for that. All right. You ready for the word game, Jeff?
Sure. Yeah.
All right. So again, for the audience, I'm going to say one word. Jeff has the opportunity to say one word back or maybe a short phrase. And he cannot repeat himself. Mm-hmm. All right. First word, Jeff. Trust.
Authenticity.
Empathy.
Humility.
People.
Openness.
Power.
Sharing.
I like these words you're giving back. Problems.
Solutions.
Yes. Perfection.
Unattainable.
Service.
Mindedness.
Duty. You're going to repeat
focus. Did I almost was. Yeah.
All right. Inspire.
Learning. Did I say that one?
No, you didn't. That's good.
Okay, good.
Impact.
Strength.
That's good. Those are great responses, Jeff. Those are some of the best ones I've got.
Oh, thanks.
They're really good. Well, and they're right off the cuff. So good job.
Yeah.
All right. So favorite book of all time or most recently read that you want to give a shout out to?
I'm kind of bad about like the number one of all time, but I can share a book that I read with you that I read in the last year, and it's called A Good Provider is One Who Leaves, and it's about the immigration around the world, and it focuses on a couple of families. One of the families is from the Philippines, and in the Philippines, they actually had a program. It was all around the world, in Saudi Arabia, and in the U.S. and in other countries. And it was a profile of the impact that it had on these families. And it really hit home, of course, because of the work that we do, but that this was, it was actually an economic generator, and it generated more. It was like 3 times the GDP of the country or something like that, something outrageous. And it was like every page I read in this book, I was just like, I had no idea. And it's so beautifully written. So I'd highly recommend it. It's by Jason DeParle, who is a journalist and is just a brilliant writer.
I'll write that down. That sounds very interesting. And it's off the beaten path of what I typically read. So I like to sprinkle those in there. So that's great. So how can people get involved with the Literacy Network? I mean, you've given so much to our audience today on leadership. I want to make sure that the audience can get back to you as well.
That's wonderful. Thanks, Josh. Our website is litnetwork.org. And folks can learn about how to volunteer with Literacy Network, learn more about the work that we do. Please feel free to get in touch with me directly. You can just email me at jeff@litnetwork.org.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for your time today, Jeff. It's been a pleasure getting to know you a little bit and giving back to the audience. And hopefully the broader Madison, Dane County community gets a lot out of this. And then any listeners countrywide can learn a lot from your empowering teams. And for the audience, as you go about your day, remember to keep inspiration and impact on the top of your minds. We'll talk to you next time.